Hey.
Hey, there we go.
Hey, there we go. Now we have sound. Now we're working. That's good. That's cool. So, welcome back to the Bulldog Hour, episode 10 of the 5th season. And, you know, we're going to recap our game against Springford. We're going to preview the game against Manheim Central. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And we have highlights, we have interviews, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. We're moving through the season pretty quickly. It's kind of crazy. When I get to Friday nights, I'm like, wait, that last game was already a week ago. It's just kind of flying by. But it's been a lot of fun so far. Hopefully it stays fun.
Yeah. So we're dealing with a game coming up that I'm sure has been on the coaches and players' mind for most of the last year. If you recall, I know you do, but in 2018 we went to Manheim to take on the Manheim Central Barons and played one heck of a game defensively, but had trouble offensively and some major letdowns on special teams and ended up losing despite a incredible effort for 98.5% of the game from the
Yeah.
defense. I mean, last year, the then junior at the time, Evan Simon, only completed 3 passes. 2 of them went for touchdowns, I believe, and the other one actually wasn't a real completion because it clearly hit the turf, but the refs didn't see it.
Right.
And you
Is
know,
that kind of like it was completed but out of bounds?
yes. So
Okay.
speaking of Springford, we'll be recapping that entire game. We got the highlights, and because it was a Wilson victory, 42-23 over the Rams, the second win for the Bulldogs over a Rams team this year. We will have some interviews real quick at the end. We're going to talk to a few guys that they play both ways, but we're going to talk to them mostly about their defensive efforts this past week, and then we also grabbed Coach Dahms as well. So let's go over the housekeeping items, and we want to recognize our show sponsors that help us here: May's Sandwich Shop, Topher's 10th and Elm Cafe, and then our 2 anonymous donors. We appreciate your support of the show and helping us out for our 5th season here. And there are multiple ways you can do that. Not all of them involve money, but we do have the sponsorships and advertising, and we accept the in-kind donations. BulldogHour.com is a great reference, not just for what's going on with this show, but for the history and heritage of the team. And then Justin's favorite thing, spreading the word.
Yeah, like and share.
We enjoy doing these live shows. If I remember to correctly unmute our mics and get the audio sent out, we enjoy doing these
One of these
shows.
years
So
you'll get it down.
yeah, I mean,
I say that as I just sit here and talk. Like that's all. That is literally all I have to do, and I screw that up plenty of times. You have a million different things going on, and I still just like to make fun of you. So that's what we do.
Well, my next live show without Justin will be next Sunday as I look for a replacement host because clearly that's needed. But no, we'll be back a week from now, September 15th, to recap game number 4 and preview game number 5 of the 2019 season, which sounds ridiculous already as what we're talking about. Hey, we're going to be getting ready to preview the midpoint of the regular season.
Right.
But hey, that's the way time works.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy.
And as Justin alluded to a little bit earlier, whether or not you heard it, I'm not sure, but the schedule is up here if
That's
you're
not
watching. But left side gone. We got 3 columns: column 1, column A, whatever you want to say. It's gone, over with, done. And now the first part of the middle column, that meat of the schedule, check mark, gone. We now have 6 regular season games left in that column, 7 overall, coming up this Friday, September 13th at Gursky against Manheim Central, the Lancaster-Lebanon League mandated crossover game. And we fell to the Barons, as I already mentioned, last season in Manheim, and are looking forward to hosting Manheim Central this Friday. And this is the first time Manheim Central has visited Gursky, Wilson, West Lawn since 2010, 2011?
Yeah, in one of those years, but I don't remember. Like, I don't believe I was at those games. I had other fall commitments during those years.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly because I was about to
I
say it
remember
was
is when we
1999, but that's not true.
right. But the one I remember is when we had to go back up there on a Saturday, I think, or even
I think it was a
next
Monday.
week.
I think it might have been
Yeah,
Monday.
for like bad weather.
That
or
was at
something like that.
Manheim, though.
Right. So I know there was a game. There was like a pair of games there somewhere in that time frame, but I don't remember exactly when that was.
Yeah, that was right before I got really involved. Like I'd already been coaching I coached at Central and then at West that first year that it opened in 2010. But I didn't start getting big into doing so much on Friday nights for the varsity team until late 2010. I think literally the first game that I started the Twitter account and started sending that stuff out was for the playoff game against Cumberland Valley that Wilson ultimately lost. But then 2011 was when things started to really get rolling. And I know at that time, Wilson was playing Manheim Central, was finishing, I don't know if it was a 2-year rotation or a 4-year rotation.
I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can pull up the information here. So we played at Manheim Central in 2009, lost by 2, and I remember that game listening to it on the radio as we came back from Penn State. I believe that game. I think. What didn't we do? Wasn't that me, you, and Adam? Like, weren't we coming home together?
25 rankings are presented by Power.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Like they all kind of run together.
So anyway, September 11th, 2009, Wilson played at Manheim Central and lost 29-27. And then in 2010, the team they hosted Manheim Central on September 10th and won 25-22 en route to an undefeated regular season. Yeah. Now they must have been a multi-year contract because I'm pretty sure they played in 2011, and that was at Manheim Central, and that was on a Monday as it got postponed because of massive flooding on their way to the Manheim area. Wilson would ultimately win 27-13 on a Monday. I think it was like a Monday afternoon.
Yeah,
it was really, really, really odd. But prior to last year, I believe that was the final season that Wilson and Manheim Central played because they did not meet the next season in 2012 as Wilson played Mifflin, Harrisburg, and Reading in their non-league slate. So, it's been a few years since the Barons have been to Gursky. You're talking what would I say 2010? So it's been 9 years since that had happened. They played them in 2008 and 2010, and we know that the Barons came to Gursky in 1999.
Yeah, that was a big one.
That was a big one when Pete Gilmore went off and the team held on and got revenge for a 1998 game at Manheim that Wilson thought that they had wrapped up, but it was one of those funky. Did Jeff Smoker throw a pass or was it a fumble kind of deal the rain?
See, that was all before.
That was right before you moved, yeah. So
that was actually when Wilson dipped down to Section 2 for a 2-year rotation.
Yep, in the 98-99. That was the kind of a continuation of the time where Wilson didn't play Mifflin. There was the first 2 years they never played Mifflin were, I believe, 94-95. Then they played twice, 96-97. Then missed again in 98-99, and then it came back on the schedule. Just left a couple more times, but now has been played every year since 2006. So, yeah. But let's get back on track and talk a little bit about Springford. That game played this previous Friday, and like I mentioned earlier, Wilson winning 42-23. Started off slowly. It wasn't exactly the offense started slowly. I mean, the defense only gave up 3 points.
It was a big hold too early in the game, when Springford had the big play kind of right off the bat from their offense to be able to hold to a field goal there was huge. Because if they get things rolling, that's going to be tough. They want to play that that up tempo, fast, high scoring game. Like that's their style. And that's not typically Wilson's style. Not that they can't play that way. We've seen them play that way at times. Certainly the tempo part, but I just mean, like the 4 or 5 wide receiver. That's not really the Wilson style right now. But, you want to be able to dictate the tempo. And while the score would have indicated that it didn't necessarily have that feel early on.
Right. So there was that big pass by Springford, set them up deep in Wilson territory. The defense held, limited them to 3 points. That's where the first quarter would end. It was 3-0. Wilson thought that they had gotten on the board with a punt return touchdown. That unfortunately was called back. However, Wilson would then strike quickly.
I'll be honest. One of my immediate thoughts at that point was, don't let this be like the kick return against Central Dauphin last year, where you look back and you're like, man, would that have changed the tone of the entire game? I was hoping it wouldn't, be one of those things where you're like, man, if we would have turned the tide early in the game, and it turned out that it didn't. It didn't, like, Wilson didn't kind of like hold on to that and let it keep them back. But that I'd be lying if I said the thought didn't cross my mind when that happened.
Yeah, well, they responded. They didn't let that keep them down. They drove the field, got a score. Next series, I believe, did they get a fumble then? Maybe we should just go to the highlights.
Yeah, why don't we just do that?
Work our way through there rather than try to talk about it then show it. So let's pull up the highlights here and we can take a look at how the game went on Friday evening. There it is. I knew it was on there somewhere. So
yeah, so like we mentioned, it wasn't a great offensive start, but there were moments where you could see that they were getting things done. They weren't able to kind of get it clicking. They kind of take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There were just some near misses and things like that. But once they got it going, it really wasn't. They had a few quick strikes basically. Once we got it rolling downhill, it really started to pick up quickly.
Right. So this is early in the game, the first possession. A nice 10-yard pickup by Avanti Lockhart, and you're going to hear his name a lot more coming up. But this is now the Springford possession that we talked about and alluded to. It's a nice little screen, just to the receiver that was set up kind of in the slot, and he races past a lot of Wilson defenders. Gets
good hustle to not let it turn into a bigger play.
Right inside the 20, but the defense holds. Springford does get the field goal, goes up 3-0.
In the reference of the video, which is opposite of the side that a lot of Wilson fans were watching the game from, the wind was blowing strong from left to right in terms of the way we're watching it. That was a crazy catch by Brady Gibble.
And we'd hoped that it was going to set them some things up, but it did not. As once again a deflected ball comes back to haunt the Bulldogs. As Caleb Brown tries to get the ball to, was that Brady or Eli? I think it was Eli.
Yes.
It's deflected. Eventually comes down to a second Rams defender. Troy Corson stops him. It doesn't hurt Wilson at all. Oh, good. Film not buffering. Good, great, grand. So, but yeah, let's see if we can get this.
Yeah, but the defense does, come up with the stop then, right? So, it was a little frustrating, but that's kind of what I was referring to earlier. While there weren't necessarily a ton of points that they were able to put up early, especially in that first quarter, like none. It wasn't completely. There wasn't there was nothing to show. They had driven down the field. They had the run game going. They had completed some passes. This one gets batted around. So it was a little frustrating that they weren't able to get points on the board there because you're thinking, we should get points here. You're only down 3-0. You think at least we'd have a shot. And that's one that I believe.
No, that's one we thought he was going to get something of, and he didn't.
Right.
But he launches it.
I think he referenced that in the paper, how he got close to one and then he changed it up for the later.
But this is the one that Mason Leonard, the junior running back, cornerback, he sprinted over the catch of the ball. He redirects back to where the wall was set up, and they lead him all the way. Unfortunately, there was a penalty.
In here, oh my.
And it was called back. But then Wilson doesn't panic. We're in the second quarter now, and they decide, all right, we've got one nice run from Avanti, but they've been stuffing the run, so they went to quick passes, and they found their shifty guy in Troy Corson, who's playing offense for the first time since, middle of Central Dauphin game?
Yeah.
And they just keep going to Corson because that's what was working. Short, quick passes, Troy is so shifty; he can make people miss,
Right.
and they just
And
rode
he
him
was
this
getting-
entire
They were
drive.
getting good matchups, and they were just taking advantage of it.
And eventually, they go back to Avanti, who just sets him up inside the 10. And well, the only way to finish that drive is to go back to the guy that got you there. And Troy, again catches the pass, makes a guy miss, and then launches himself into the end zone for
I
the
believe
score.
it was 6 ABC Philly had a great, they had that on their camera there. It was a great one.
And then this happened.
Yeah.
Ethan Capitano, who, like Justin mentioned, he was close to getting one the first time, does get it this time. Bulldogs recover deep in Springford territory.
After the defense had a great stand.
Johnny Wildman recovered that one. And now we're going to see a shovel pass to Mason Leonard just a couple plays after that recovery. All of a sudden, Wilson has up 14-3 after having been down 3-0 for the entire first quarter into the second quarter. And now we're going to see how the Bulldogs got to their third touchdown, and that was after this strip sack by A.J. Futrick. It's picked up and recovered by Avanti, and the team is in business. And a handful of plays later, they give the ball to their stud running back. The senior gets in, Lockhart for the touchdown, and just quickly, within like 4 minutes of game time,
Right.
it went from 3-0 to 21-3, and you knew that Wilson was now in control. And now this was a crazy play.
Absolutely.
High snap, quarterback picks it up, and you're going to see Wilson defender Nate Hoekstra absolutely levels him inbounds.
Yeah.
But Springfield coaches weren't happy with that.
No.
They swear it was a helmet to helmet, but the video did not
like it was
show
on the
that.
shoulder, yeah.
Especially because he had his arm up.
Right.
But like we had mentioned, if they thought it was such a vicious, crazy hit,
They
why
put
was he
him
allowed to
in.
play right away? If you
Right.
thought that he was suffering from a head injury or concussion, why would you?
Right.
But whatever. So the last play you saw was a Springfield touchdown, and to answer that, all Wilson would do would be return it all the way for the score. This is also Mason Leonard, who had a punt return called back, but he makes up for it on a kickoff. So Wilson's now up 28-10. They stop Springfield on the next series, and when Wilson gets the ball back, we're now into the fourth quarter, and Avani Lockhart took over. He was running guys over, would not quit. It would take 2, 3, 4 guys, hits, tackle attempts to bring him down. He put Wilson up 35-10. But Ryan Angro, give Springfield passing game that offense credit. He threw for 408 yards. I believe it was not only a personal record, but a Springfield record.
And this is a great onside kick. You got the bounce, and then it pops up really high. Brady did a great job of going up.
Yeah, he got leveled.
Yes.
So it was 35-17. Wilson recovers the onside kick, and the next play, Caleb Brown puts an exclamation point on the game, just saying, "You can't hang with us." And he puts Wilson up for their final score to go up 42-17. Now you're going to see the Rams here. They add another one late after a few big passes. And that was the name of the game on the evening. If the first guy couldn't tackle the guy on the quick slant, he usually found the middle wide open. And they also made a couple nice passes down the sideline. And here, once again, you're going to see a double move. And number 4 gets the score.
A nice catch, to get us.
They had a couple of them. I mean, they have very talented wide receivers.
And the quarterback when he had time, he was doing really well.
Yeah, it's now 42-23. Springford still thinking they can put up a few more scores, but Ethan Capitano there kind of puts an exclamation point on it right there, ending any attempt at a late Springford comeback. But the name of the game there was what happened in that 4-minute period in the second quarter.
Completely. Like we talked about, the offense was they couldn't quite put it all together. They had moved the ball. They had shown that they could do that. It's just kind of finishing off the drive and things like that, and they were able to get that going finally in that second quarter. And then the defense and special teams came through too to just kind of keep it going. So there was no let up really there, which is great. You like to see them. When I was talking to someone at halftime, we talked that they weathered the storm. At the beginning, we got the ball first, weren't able to really do a whole lot. Gave them the ball, they score. We drive down, turnover, but then we were able. Our defense kind of held steady there till the offense just unleashed a barrage there for a few minutes. And
like you said, there was no panic. There was resiliency. you know,
Things you like to see.
They changed their game plan on offense. You know, when they went and that opened it up. I mean, they kind of went back to what their bread and butter is eventually, but doing the quick passes to Troy and the receivers helped things, you know, stretch the field a little bit.
Right.
They loosened up the defenders, and you know, they took advantage of turnovers.
Everyone knew going in, like you want to feed the ball to Lockhart and Leonard. You know, you want to give those guys the ball in the backfield, and to show that we're able to complete those passes was huge, because then they can't just sell out to stop the run. You know, so that's it just changes things a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you know, team effort, but a few individuals standing out. Caleb Brown, great game. Troy Corson, again, a great game. But I think on the evening, the guy who is going to get the nod for our player of the game this week is Avanti Lockhart for his contributions on both sides of the ball. He ended up rushing 14 times for 109 yards and 2 touchdowns, both of which you saw. He also had 2 catches for 30 yards, and then from his linebacker spot, he added 2 tackles and a fumble recovery.
Yeah, it's a really solid game all the way around. We also saw in one of the plays, he had a heck of a stiff arm.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I had a couple good pictures of him like that, but 2 of them where he was running people over, I missed the focus. The background was in focus, and then the other. One of the sideline guys stepped in the way as he's like stiff arm. I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" I was like, I had this great picture, and there's just like part of a pole like right over Avanti. I was like, "No, that was the shot." So, but you know that happens sometimes.
Yeah,
but
I guess had to be there.
Yeah, I guess so. So Avanti Lockhart is our player of the game this week. Great all-around game and well-earned, and you know,
absolutely,
we know that Caleb and Troy are going to get one of these years. I feel like we've mentioned them all 3 weeks now because they've had great games the first 3 weeks of the season. Same thing with Brady Gibble.
We talked about Avanti last week too. We're like, he scored 3 touchdowns really quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and Mason Leonard too. Obviously, he easily could have been to the player of the game for that, for all his contributions. And all these guys are making a name for themselves, and they'll get it. We just went a little bit different the first 2 weeks of the season, so it's put us behind the 8 ball with some of these big name skill players. But they'll all make contributions the rest of the season, and they'll get their time in the spotlight for sure. So. Well, we did, like I said earlier, we caught up with a few people after the game with some interviews. So we're going to hit that for you right now, back to back. First up is going to be with the players. We talked to Nate Hoekstra, Alex Gibble, and Troy Corson, and then we're going to hear from Coach Dahms. So real quick, just a couple minutes each, and then we'll wrap up Spring Forward and move on to our preview of the Manheim Central game. Go ahead. All right, joining me post-game now, we're going to focus here on the defensive side of the ball, talk with Nate Hoekstra, Alex Gibble, and Troy Corson. We talked to Mason last week, so we're going to say bye to him, although he had a great game tonight, didn't he, guys? What a performance by Mason again. But you guys, you know, defensive performance against Springford, they like to open it up. They got 23, but, man, you guys look good against their dynamic wide receivers, and their quarterback Engro is amazing. You know, what are you thinking after this victory?
Honestly, we didn't do enough. We need to limit those big plays that we always seem to give up, and that's always been a problem for us, even last year.
Yeah.
So we're still hungry to get that down.
And plus, this was our first team that we played that was mostly like a passing team. We got a big one up next week, so it was just like a little stepping stone for us.
Work those coverages.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just about coming into this week of practice, focusing, getting better, and getting ready for Manheim Central.
Yeah, speaking of Manheim Central, they play Warwick tonight. They got beat up pretty good, 37-7 by the Warriors. But Manheim Central is coming to Gursky next week. I know you guys all are going to want a little bit of vengeance after last year. Felt like you let one get away. Well, what do you think you're going to be focusing on this week in practice?
Vengeance. We need to channel all of our rage and just turn it all on those Manheim Central Barons.
And definitely on defense, we got to learn to stay on our man longer because they obviously have a good quarterback.
Yeah, Evan Simon's going to Rutgers. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Just staying on the receivers, learn the routes, and just getting better every day.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, guys, I don't want to hold you. I know you want to go and grab some food and get home. So congratulations on the victory. Great performance once again. Another win. That's what we like to see. And we look forward to welcoming the Barons to Gursky next Friday.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right, we're post-game after the victory over Springford with Wilson head coach Coach Dahms. Coach, what did you like this week before we get to the things we need to focus on? What did you like against Springford tonight?
I think our special teams played very well again. I mean, we had a punt return for a touchdown call back. We had a block punt. We had a kickoff return for a touchdown. We recovered a very, very good onside kick. So, special teams are playing well. That's positive. Offensively, we started a little slow.
Yes.
We knew they were going to blitz a lot, and, I think we were a little tentative initially and not getting after it, but Avanti ran.
He ran hard.
Like a madman.
Yeah, he was. He was running real hard
I think
tonight.
he's trying to make a statement that he can play running back in college.
He certainly looked that way
yeah.
tonight.
But, and defensively we're tough with a run, but, they have 4 good wideouts.
Yeah, right.
Some of those the passes, the passes down the sideline were up, outside shoulder, right on the money.
Perfect
tall
passes,
receiver, and where we had coverage on. Nothing you're going to do about that. Same with the back of the end zone. But we did have a lot of breakdowns in our coverage that we got to. Like I said, we have an inexperienced secondary, so we'll spend some time. If we can keep winning, they're only going to get better as they keep looking at films and seeing their mistakes.
Is there a possibility of seeing Matt Fry back in the lineup soon, or is he still out for a few more weeks?
He's still on the shelf.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way that Mason Leonard, Eli Rotenberg, Alex Gibble, Troy Corson played tonight, you mentioned there were a few miscues, few mistakes, but overall, against this team that can throw out so many talented receivers, it was a positive experience. But you mentioned special teams, what play from them, Mason on that side of the ball. And did you see something, did Jeremy see something at the beginning after the offense started slowly? Was there something that changed in the game plan after you saw the blitzing, or was there something that they were able to switch, or was it more of them calming down and relaxing and just running the way you'd expect them to play?
I don't know that they showed us anything we hadn't worked against, but they moved. Typically, they moved their tackle to a 1-tech. They had him head up on the nose, and they were playing some games there. And we just had to clean up a couple of calls and make sure we were making the right line calls. And once we did that, the way Avanti was running, and then we started taking control up front.
Well, it certainly looks like this year LL Section 1 is absolutely stacked with the results elsewhere around the league tonight, with Warwick beating Manheim Central 37-7, and Central Dauphin falling to Manheim Township 10-7. Do you make anything from those scores against opponents that you're going to play all of them, or you have already played one of them? Does that come into play when you're talking about future matchups?
The league is loaded, like you said. We're back to the league of old when there was 4 teams that could win it.
Possibly win it, yep.
And we got 4 teams, probably that maybe 5 if you throw Cedar Crest in there.
They beat York High tonight.
Yeah, that's 5 teams that can win it. So it's going to see who can stay healthy, who can win the close one, and but it doesn't get any easier. So.
Well, big one next week, back at Gursky against Manheim Central, and we look forward to a huge crowd there, and we thank you for joining us once again, Coach.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good job.
All right, so those are our post-game interviews with football players and Coach Dahms, and anything else to say about the Springford game?
No, not really. I think, like we said, and the players and coaches kind of said too, there were things that they did really well. There's plenty to work on, but they, hopefully they can go back and they can get better. It was, while we talked, from Parkland to CD and then CD to Mifflin and then Mifflin to Springford, like you wanted to see things get better. And I think there were a lot of things that we have seen them get better on. But it was kind of like the first time for a lot of the stuff that we saw from Springford too. So like, yes, you can talk about, I want to see the improvement here, but yeah, this is the first team where we've seen where they're going to really just sit back there and just try and pick you apart.
Right.
I think I read that Springford averaged less than 1 yard per carry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
that was my next thing to bring up the stats.
Yeah,
so
but
that's a good segue.
Yeah,
good segue.
I think I read that. So like now they got it through the air though. So
yeah, right. They made up for it. But
right.
Individually speaking, Caleb Brown, the Wilson quarterback, He actually led the team in rushing. He ended up with 115 rushing yards, with the long being that 67-yard touchdown run. Avanti, as we already mentioned, had 109 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns. Jaden Jones, a sophomore, also came in near the end, and he had 7 for 56. And receiving wise, we talked Troy Corson, huge impact there. 7 for 64 on the score. Avanti, we mentioned 2 for 30. Brady had that big one for 31, and then Mason had the shovel for 22, which led to a touchdown. And for the Rams, Ryan Engro was 25 of 49 for 408 yards, 2 touchdowns with a long of 40. Now, Wilson did sack him 3 times, but Dante Bonanni, the returning senior receiver for them, had 174 yards. Now, he didn't have any of the touchdowns. That was saved for BJ Beard. He only had 3 catches for 32 yards, but 2 of them were for scores. And Blaise Scarcelli, who that name may sound familiar because his older brother was a very strong Rams player a couple years ago. He also hauled in 6 catches for 115 yards. Defensively speaking, before we get to the team stats, Wilson was led by Anthony Coper with 7.5 tackles, 1 for loss, which was a sack. And Troy Corson on the defensive side also had 7.5 total tackles. AJ Futrich, we mentioned, he had the big strip sack that was recovered by Avanti. He had 6.5 tackles. 2.5 of them were for loss. He also had 2 pass breakups and a sack. The sack that led to the fumble. And Mason, 6 tackles for him as well. And Alex Gibble, 4 from his safety spot. And Nate Hoekstra, 3.5. So a lot of good team tackling, a lot of good individual numbers. They were swarming to the ball. That wasn't an issue when the player came across the middle, or they tried to do a running play. The guys were there. So cut down on a little bit of the open field, quick slant passes, and like Coach Dahms said, some of the deep balls were just so well thrown. There was nothing the corners could do.
Right, you saw that in the highlights.
Yeah.
Some of them, like, we had guys there. It was just a perfectly thrown ball, a well-run route, and they make the play.
Yeah.
It happens sometimes.
So here you go. Pretty even in first downs. Wilson ended up with 20, but Springford had 19. But the rushes, like Justin mentioned, Wilson 38 for 264. Springford 25 for 27. Yeah. So just a hair over 1 yard per carry for the Rams. And, total offensive, really even again. 58 plays for the Bulldogs, 425 yards. 74 plays for Springford, 435 yards. Not that far off at all. Possession time, not much different, 23-37 to 24-23 in favor of the Rams. Third down conversions, Wilson hit on about 50%, whereas Springford was more on 1 out of 3. And Wilson did well on fourth downs as well. Now, they couldn't convert 1 that they attempted, but when the Rams went for it on fourth, they only converted 1. Unfortunately, it was for a touchdown, right. But they were 1 of 5.
That was after they had that was their 4th try from the 1 yard line.
So. It was the 4th try from the 1 yard line, and I don't know that there was anything definitive to say he definitely got in. There was enough of a pile and a push that they gave it to him, right. But from where I was standing, I could not tell. Right. I had no idea. Right. So benefit of the doubt to the offense and the officiating there. So all around strong performance by the Wilson defense on the evening. So we're going to now move towards our Manheim Central preview. Just got to pull up the stats and info on that. All right, here we go. So Manheim Central, like I mentioned, not a somewhat familiar foe of Wilson. They haven't played them a ton. They actually played them when they were Manheim Borough. That's what Manheim Central was before they became Manheim Central. And as Justin and I mentioned earlier, they played just last year, and then they played in a 4-game set in the late 2000s, early 2010s, and then met up as Section 2 foes in the late 90s. And it's always been a pretty pretty even match. 98-99, 1-1, 2008 through 2011, 2-2, I believe. Wilson won in 2008, and yeah, I think that it was ended up 2-2 there. And now Manheim Central got the better of the Bulldogs last year, and Wilson will look to return the favor this Friday night at Gursky. So who are the Barons? Well, they're coached by Dave Hahn. This is his 5th season, and in 5 years and 55 games entering this season, he was 48-7. So really didn't miss a beat after the great Mike Williams retired following I think 2014 was his last season there. They were 6-0 and Section 2 champs of the LL League in 2018, and they finished the season 14-1 overall. They beat our rival Governor Mifflin in the playoffs, as well as Cedar Cliff and their Section 2 rival Cocalico to win the District 3 5A championship. They then won their state semifinal game against Upper Dublin before falling in a very close state title game to Penn Hills 36-31. So Manheim Central had one heck of a team last year, but they do lose a lot. But they have their Division I college quarterback returning. Evan Simon, who I mentioned in the interview, is committed to Rutgers, but he is a 4-year, or this is his 4th year as a starter for the Barons. And I mentioned earlier, they've never been short on quarterback talent. Probably the biggest before Evan Simon was Jeff Smoker, who Wilson got to play against in 1998 and 1999. So up until last week, Manheim Central had been riding a 27 game regular season unbeaten streak. They hadn't lost since about this time. I think it was later. I think it was end of September 2016 was the last time they lost a regular season game. But as we mentioned in the interviews and in the preview, Manheim Central fell to Warwick at Warwick 37-7 last week. So that was a little bit of a shock, but Manheim Central, maybe not the Manheim Central that they have been recently, especially not the team that they were last year. And why is that? Well, the biggest thing is, well, it's twofold. They lost stud running back linebacker Tyler Flick, who actually holds the program record for rushing. Last year, he rushed for over 1,800 yards and 33 touchdowns, so he's gone. But even bigger, and I think a lot of teams would tell you this, especially Wilson, with the way Wilson is made up this year, they lost a bunch of their linemen who were multi-year starters. 4 are gone. They had to replace 4 starters, only 1 back. And it's just a tough, a little bit of lots of turnover. I don't want to call it a rebuilding year because Manheim Central, much like people say about Wilson, they tend to just reload. But some of these teams, there's a little bit of an ebb and flow, and this could be one of those years for Manheim Central that's slightly down. Maybe they only win 8 games in the regular season this year rather than their 9 or 10. But the talent is still there for sure. They beat Hempfield earlier this season, 2 weeks ago now in week 2, and they also beat Susquehanna Township. And returning wise, besides Evan Simon, he does have the Wagner twins returning, who combined for 16 touchdowns last year. Tight end Jake Martin, and someone familiar to the Wilson program, their H-back Jake Harbach, whose father played for the Bulldogs, is back, and Jake actually scored one of Manheim Central's touchdowns against the Bulldogs last year as a junior. But yeah, they're only returning, I think it's like 10 starters last year. So, it's tough sailing for them. It's that theory that I mentioned that people always talk about, these great programs, reloading, not rebuilding, could be tested at Manheim Central this year. And I know Wilson would love to be one to make it feel that way and drop them to 2-2.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things that it's going to be tough. Like we were talking about this last week. I feel like in a way Wilson understands what it's like to be on the receiving end of one of those Warwick games where they just get it going. Yeah. But we also know how that kind of that we feel. I think back to last year. I don't think that we feel, and I say we, meaning the team and everything, would feel that one game was indicative of our season or even the team. You know what I mean? We kind of not that Warwick didn't earn it. They certainly earned it that night. They took it to us. But I don't think that's the win, and to win close games and to win big games. They made the state final last year,
Right.
correct? Yeah. So like,
they lost to Penn Hills 36-31.
Right. So you're not just talking about like a team that kind of came out of nowhere and has made runs. No, these kids grow up knowing what it's like to win.
Right.
And so they're not just gonna like calmly take it and be like, oh, oh well, guess we didn't win this one. No, that's not how it goes. They're going to be more than ready to go.
They're going to be fired up. Yeah, they're going to be ready to go.
Yeah, and they're going to be out to try and prove something. So it's one of those things where
it's a dangerous game.
I hope our guys are ready. And we talked about this last week. We talked about it every week now. Like, that's kind of my fear is that I know what our guys are capable of, or at least have an idea of what they're capable of. But if you're not ready to go, anybody can get you. So, I feel like we're going to be somewhere in between here, between what we saw the first couple weeks and what we saw last week. You're not going to have Manheim Central out there trying to throw it, 50 times. Again, it was not me this time.
It wasn't you this time.
The show's not over though, so there's still a chance.
There's time.
But
give it time.
It's one of those where, when you look at it, I just, it's going to be a great game. Manheim Central is going to be ready to go. I feel like Wilson, we talked to them, they feel like they have something to prove too. So you get two teams that kind of have the chip on their shoulder. Usually leads to an exciting game. So we'll have to wait and see, but it should be a fun Friday night at Gursky.
Yeah, and I think the 37-7 is a little deceptive.
Absolutely.
Because for a while we were like, "What's the score?" And it was, what was it like?
It was like 14-7.
Well, yeah, it was like it was like 10-0 or 17-7 or 14. However the field goals, touchdowns, but like it was close. It was close, and then all of a sudden Warwick pulled away like quickly.
Right.
It could have been the Barons forcing, just trying to get something done, and it went the other way quickly, and just the wheels fell off. But it was at Warwick, so that doesn't ever help. Now we get him at Gursky, which helps us.
Right. But I also, on the flip side, like I understand, like we've seen this Warwick team. We saw them real good last year. We thought like they are really good. So like losing to them doesn't mean that you're bad.
No.
Right? No. I know that wasn't what you're. But it's just like it's hard to put a finger on what exactly that game was last Friday. And, once you fall behind and late, if you're trying to take chances that you wouldn't typically take, there's all kinds of stuff. But that they're going to refocus and they're going to be ready to go on Friday. And our guys hopefully are ready to rise up and meet that challenge.
Yeah, it's going to be one heck of a game. So, but why don't we take a couple minutes here and watch the Warwick Manheim Central highlight that is posted on Huddle, and that should give us a little bit of a better idea of exactly what went down in Lidditz last Friday night. And we will wait for this ad to play and not worry about that, and then we will see what was going on between the Warriors and the Barons. And here we go. So, we don't need that up there right now, do we now? So, yeah, McCracken has been on fire.
Yes,
and we're gonna see 4th down deep in Manheim Central territory.
Beautiful throw.
And there you go. So Warwick got on the board first, 7-0. And this is all from the Warwick point of view, so we're probably not going to see any Manheim Central highlights here. But Caleb Schmidt seems to be his main point of contact here. Now on a screen pass. Okay. So, yeah, this is just, we'll just keep talking while this plays so that those of you watching, you can kind of check out.
You see, they were able to get pressure on Simon.
Warwick, and Manheim Central.
But that was one of the things, that line is still coming together for Manheim Central, but that's going to progress as the season goes on. So, they had to replace a lot from a state caliber team in here. They got somebody back behind. Off they go.
Yep. And that is not Trey Glass, as he is out for the season.
Yeah.
For Warwick. So they have guys stepping up, guys that were playing though last year. The amount of guys that Warwick has back, pretty impressive, including, one of the best recruits in the nation for the 2021 cycle in Rucci.
Yeah.
And, McCracken too. And both of them are back next year. Now, I don't know anything about the receivers and running backs if they're back next year, but at least the quarterback and big offensive tackle will also be back in 2020. So, yeah, it also gives us a nice preview of what's to come weeks down the line. But obviously, the coaching staff and the players are more interested in what's happening with Manheim Central. And, it just kind of reminds me of the way Wilson was in 2017 and 2018. Like, they still have guys that are good football players, but they just couldn't put it all together. Maybe there was a weakness here or there, or the other teams were just flat out either just better. Like Wilson was in every game the 2 years that people talk about being a down year. Years they went 8-4.
Right,
like 8-4.
Even the game last year at Warwick, they were able to, like they had some chances right before half to really kind of change things around, and then it got out of hand quickly. But it was one of those things where, so we've seen that, and we know that can happen against Warwick. So, I'm not, like you said, I'm not looking a whole lot into the score of that game. I mean, you look into it a little bit. Warwick obviously handled their business, but we're going to see probably a better version of Manheim Central this Friday than what they were able to put out on the field last Friday.
Yeah, or they're going to be ready to go, just like Springford was in the first quarter of this last week. Like, this was a huge game for Springford. They wanted to do it for their coach. They wanted to prove that they could hang with Wilson because they hadn't beaten Wilson in the first 3 tries in this series. Excuse me. And
they've been really close.
They have, they've been very, very close. The first one was epic.
Right.
Remember that one?
I do remember hearing about.
You remember hearing about that one? Yeah, you were wearing out that one. Double overtime, 1 for 2. Wilson stopped him. I think 41-40. I think at Gursky.
I believe so.
Then Wilson went down in 2017 and needed some crazy plays from Iggy.
Yeah.
To leave Royersford with the victory.
Yeah.
Then last year they just wouldn't go away. Like they just hung in there. I think it was like 33-22 or something like that. But they just hung around. Same thing this year. They were toe to toe with the lead first quarter, and then if you're a team that just they bend but not break, they keep fighting. They don't panic, and that's what Wilson did. And a few things presented themselves. They even got a punt return for a touchdown call back. That didn't ruin them. They changed things up, drove down the field, got a score. Then block punt, fumble recovery, and all of a sudden 21-3, and that was pretty much all she wrote right there.
Yeah. So like when we look at it, I hope that our guys can build. I know we kind of mentioned that, and it becomes cliche, but there was plenty to learn from in the Springford tape and from that experience. So hopefully they're able to kind of use that as a learning experience. I think Coach Dahms mentioned it in those things. When we can keep learning as we're winning, that's always a positive thing.
Yep.
Because you need to learn, win or lose. You need to learn from what happened. But if you can keep learning as you're winning, that's a little more fun.
And now 3 games in, you know who you are. Like you have the rust is knocked off. You kind of have your identity down, and probably the most positive thing for Wilson is that they've had incredible special teams, very, very strong defense, and the offense has done enough to get it done, and has proven that they can do it both through the air and on the ground.
Yeah, so those are the things that they need to keep refining. Because like we said, we took another step forward on Friday night at Springford. You want to keep that moving this week. You don't want to kind of stay still or lose that momentum that you have, that you're kind of building through this year. You want to keep it going, and so hopefully they can do that, and come out ready to go. And just do the things that we've seen them be able to do a lot early in the season, and hopefully, they mentioned it right away. The first thing that the players mentioned when we interviewed them, how do you feel? And they're like, we need to cut down on the big plays.
We need to do better. Yeah,
and that's the attitude you want to hear. because that's exactly, if they came out and were like, look, this is about as good as it's going to get. No, that's, first of all, Dahms probably would have like jumped over. Like,
Yeah.
he would have just like reappeared like over there out of nowhere and probably started screaming at him. But like, you know, that attitude's not going to get you anywhere, obviously. So the whole idea of improving and always working on the stuff that you need to kind of get better, that's the key. And it sounds like that's what they're going to be doing. And that's all we can really ask for is do that and give our best effort this coming Friday and be ready for a good one at Gursky.
So the game is at home Friday, 7 o'clock. Like Justin said, at Gursky. It is Gold Night.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Wilson's annual.
I believe those shirts go on sale at school tomorrow for the
Yes,
students.
that's true. For the students, you can stop by during school to buy the Gold Out shirts. And again, the Gold Out is kind of a kickoff for Wilson Minithon, the fundraising window. And again, this is to raise awareness and to help fight childhood cancer, pediatric cancer, and that is related to the Penn State Dance Marathon, or Thon, through the Penn State Children's Hospital. And Wilson has been running a mini-thon now for 6 years.
I don't know.
I think it's right around there. So, come out, support the Bulldogs, wear gold, and help out a good cause.
Yeah.
So, I think that's it, though. Do you have anything else to add before we head out of here for the week?
No.
All right. Well, for the Wilson football program and Justin Raffoff, I'm Joe Mays. Until next time, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.